continuation, almost part two of what we just heard. Were you here for the first part?
Yeah,
So we're dealing with, I don't know enough about Ms. Evans' presentation. Will you be dealing with elementary schools as well? Although farther up the ladder?
I'll be talking about travelers and intercultural communication.
So you're jumping outside of schools completely?
Not necessarily. The study abroad would be an element of this. It's just intercultural gender communication.
I can't wait.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shelby Evans, and I will be presenting on this topic, intercultural gender communication. Can you really take on your role? I'm advised by the wonderful and brilliant Professor Ennis Mitchell. I chose to attend St. Edward's University largely because of their social justice-driven mission and their brand, Take On Your World. My first opportunity to truly experience this was in a 2-week excursion with Dr. Cotter in his Sustainability and Global Processes class. And for the rest of that 2014 summer, I backpacked across the majority of Europe. The inquisitive looks that I received, not just for my body-sized backpack, but also for being a solo female traveler, is what inspired this presentation, where I will discuss cross-cultural social interactions and the issues of safety and miscommunication for travelers. So first I will touch on some important definitions of communication terms, then I'll briefly cover some related previous academic works, then I'll talk about my field research, and then I will move into the analysis and results of my research, and then finally discussion. So some definitions. Gender identity, this is also very related to McKenna's presentation. Gender identity is an individual's self-conception of being a man or a woman, which is distinguished from biological sex. Gender performance is the active expression of a facet of identity, being gender. And then cultural context is a situated social understanding of norms, often varied in different geographic locations. So some previous work in the interpersonal, intercultural, and gender communication field supports that identity impacts decision-making. Gender as a facet of identity is socially constructed, so it has no singular definition or expression. And that social constructs can vary in different cultures and locations, meaning that masculinity and femininity are cultural constructs. So while previous works provide insights into how people formulate their identities, how those identities function in society, and how social norms of different cultures can vary, my research intends to expand this insight into how these communication dynamics are experienced by travelers. So while studying abroad has exponentially grown in popularity across the globe, America included, it's also linked to students having higher GPAs, better paying jobs, and greater job satisfaction. American media, like movies like Hostel and Taken, as well as sort of hyped up journal articles or blogs, frame travel as a dangerous undertaking, particularly for women. While I conducted my research, the theme of women's safety was prevalent. A quote that I pulled from my data that exemplifies this is from a German woman. I'm traveling to South Africa soon. I'm a little curious that it may be dangerous because people warn me for being blonde and for being a woman. I don't think that all German women feel safe necessarily. I think more women feel unsafe because they're women. Perhaps I feel too safe. Then another quote from an American man. Yes, I know men don't have to worry as much for their safety as women. This perspective on travel is something I'd like the audience to keep in mind as I start discussing my research. So this past summer, with the support of the Summer Academic Excellence Award and the support of the Internal Review Board, I conducted 51 surveys and semi-structured interviews collected from 47 individuals whose countries of origin are listed here and shown on this map. My participants were 24 men, 22 women, and 1 biological female who identified as androgynous. So the surveys collected described the experiences of individuals in the countries listed here. I asked participants to respond based upon the country they were either currently visiting or had spent the most amount of time in to ensure more accuracy. The interviews allowed more space for participants to describe their experiences in a variety of additional countries not listed here for the qualitative section of my results. So from the end of May to the start of July, I traveled through Romania, Hungary, Czech Republic, Italy, Germany, and France, collecting surveys and interviews through couch surfing meetups, hostels, BlaBlaCar ride shares, and visiting different European universities. And then from July 1st till early August, I flew into Canada and made my way down the West Coast back to Texas, still conducting surveys and interviews with people that I met. So this is the form that I used to collect data. The survey section mostly collected demographic information, as well as included 4 Likert scales that discuss the awareness of gender at home and abroad. Then in the interview section, I would ask questions and then transcribe the results so that participants were able to expand upon their answers. If they needed a point of clarity, I could provide it. And then my results, the quantitative Likert scale results, showed that women, who are marked in blue, and men, marked in red, overall were more aware and thought more frequently about their gender, both at home and abroad. And then here, men shown yellow, women shown in the black bars. I had participants check off boxes based upon the adjustments that they made. These adjustments included the way they dress, the time of day they go out, the number of people they go out with, discussion of politics as it relates to gender, sexuality, how assertively they communicate, and there was a space for additional responses, but I did not include that in my quantified responses. So for every adjustment made was totaled and then put on this bar graph where you can see that men mostly made 3 adjustments or less, while women made 3 to 5 adjustments, meaning that women are accommodating or changing their behaviors more as they travel. And I broke this down even further into these 3 different qualities of adjustment, being the way they dress, time they go out, and people they go out with, where you can see that despite there being 1 more man surveyed than women, that more women were making these adjustments pretty dramatically. And a couple of quotes that I pulled that I felt reflected this, a woman visiting Israel said, "In parts of Jerusalem, you dress conservatively. Passing an Orthodox neighborhood, a soldier recommended that we not walk down certain streets because they call you a whore or throw rocks or spit on you." And a man in England said, "Traveling in general, at night we tend to be more aware of safety." I felt those messages were more directed toward women because it's presumed that men can take care of themselves. Now, the characteristics I found that impacted awareness of identity were these 4: religiousness, socioeconomic development, which can be related to access of education, rural versus urban setting, and the generation or age of the persons interacted with. Some examples of this impact. A woman who visited Palestine said, "Women do work, but their main priority is to get married, have children, maintain the home, take care of the man, be a good hostess. Religion is very divisive there. Gender role is hugely impacted by religion, and gender role is very important and strict." A man in the Czech Republic said, "Age seems to make a difference. I could see a man was the head of the family, while younger couples seem more equal." A man in Hungary said, "Hungarian society places men a little bit higher or first compared to women. Budapest is a little different because it's close to Western Europe. But in rural places, women are more dependent and subordinated." And lastly, a woman visiting Pakistan and Egypt. In Pakistan and Egypt, you have more choices to be educated and less pressure to be married so young. Socioeconomic status plays a big role in education and people's lives. So, to demonstrate the academic support for what I found in my research, I coded the interview responses to create multi-country comparisons divided along the lines of traditional, which is defined as men mostly in charge or being the primary breadwinners or dominant, and women having primary roles as mothers or caretakers or doing domestic tasks. Then progressive was defined as more gender egalitarian, open-minded, and domestic and work task distributions can vary. Some examples of countries that were coded this way were traditional, Egypt, Mexico, Pakistan, and Romania, while progressive considered Germany, Sweden, the United States, and Australia. So using Hofstede's cultural dimensions, which is a tool to compare cultural values, what I found is that using these 2 dimensions, collectivist versus individualist and uncertainty avoidance, that there were some themes that ran between the traditional and progressive. So traditional countries, here quoted in blue, had lower scores for collectivists versus individualists, which means they're more collectivist, which is family-oriented or group-oriented. And then for the higher scoring countries, the progressive countries, that means they're more focused on individual achievement or competition. For uncertainty avoidance, the traditional countries scored higher, meaning they had less tolerance for uncertainty, which means they have more rigid rules and guidelines for beliefs or values, versus the progressive countries, which have more flexibility for beliefs and values. And then using one of the qualities I found that is an indicator of impact of identity, religiosity, the traditional countries all had higher percentages of importance placed on religion versus the progressive countries. So circling back to why this awareness and impact on identity matters, one of my final interview questions was, have you thought about your gender identity or presentation differently since traveling? Majority of people did say yes, but overwhelmingly more women than men. A man visiting the Netherlands explains, in the Netherlands, it's very egalitarian. Men feel much less need to be in a dominant role. It doesn't seem taboo for women to be in power in relationships there. While a woman in Ireland said, yes, I tend to be more outgoing when interacting with Irishmen because they're less assertive than American guys. So the purpose of studying abroad and travel is it's an opportunity to learn and grow through engaging different cultures. My research found that women felt less safe, made more adjustments, and felt the need to accommodate culture, while men, less of them studied abroad, they had less cultural awareness and less critical to their own behaviors. This might be because there's less emphasis on safety and less perceived limitations placed on men, exemplified from in this quote in A Man in Hungary. While I was there, it was quite comfortable, especially for a man. It's stupid to say because it's not fair, not equal, but I think for a man it's easier. These perceptions have a real impact on the experiences and benefits gained by individuals abroad. They could potentially leave men feeling a false sense of security or comfortability and may detract from the immersive experience of travel, or make men more vulnerable to be victims of robbery or attack due to lack of prudence. Women may feel the cultural differences limit them in their ability to truly engage a culture, or perhaps completely deter them from going to particular places entirely. Study abroad programs are wonderful, but the valuable parts of travel is being able to venture out beyond a structured program. All this is not to say that there aren't real dangers while traveling. However, those dangers are not exclusively female problems. Despite a tenacious effort to find a statistic that supported women versus men being attacked abroad, I couldn't find any major study to refer to. This is interesting to me because when I compare travel to another enriching experience, like going to university, where there's a fairly well-known statistic that 1 in 5 women at university are sexually assaulted, the narrative for women going to university is not, oh my goodness, you're going there alone by yourself? Aren't you scared? You probably shouldn't go. Instead, we promote education and awareness through programs across campuses, emphasizing consent and awareness on the issue. While we still support that college is beneficial for all individuals. So to the question, can you really take on your world? I would argue yes. My research showed that instead of placing warning signs on particular countries or assuming that one's identity will make travel easy or impossible, everyone can benefit from having an awareness of the qualities I mentioned before: religiousness, socioeconomic development, being in a city versus rural area, and considering the age of the individuals that you're interacting with. With these things in mind, travel becomes a truly viable and enriching option for all genders. I found this quote from my interviews articulated my point very well. I think before I went traveling, I was under the impression of how women traveling alone would be treated. But after traveling safely and having a good experience, that changed. So in my 3.5 years at St. Edward's University, I've seen more of the world than some people will see in their lifetime. But I'm convinced that I've barely scratched the surface of global exploration. The time that I've spent as a woman, accompanied by just my massive backpack, has changed my life. It allowed me to grow as a student and as a person. It's granted me an international network of truly wonderful friends who inspire me to know that humanity transcends geographic and cultural boundaries. I can't help but to strongly support the St. Edward's brand and encourage you all to indeed take on your world. I thank you for your time, and I'd like to extend my gratitude to Dr. Barbara Philippides and Dr. Rodenborn of the St. Edward's University Honors Program, Dr. Ines Mitchell, who's been my Gandalf and my Dumbledore and guided me so well, Dr. Cornyn Weisgerber, Dr. John Cotter, Caroline Morris in the Summer Academic Excellence Award in the Office of Fellowships, Mike Morrell, Christine Trinidad, the Office of International Education, and the St. Edward's School of Humanities and Department of Communication. I will now take your questions.
You were talking about the adjustments that a lot of people were making when they were traveling, and then you had a bar graph and you said that you had left out a lot of the kind of other, anyone that had checked like other, and I was like curious as to like what some people put it.
For other? So that was a range. Some people, so the answers ranged from, oh, I drink so much more now that I'm traveling, and then some of them were very specific in they changed their gym regime. It's sort of, there was no real normative other for me to be able to quantify it, which is the only reason I didn't include it. So those are some of the answers.
I think it's really, it's kind of a daunting task when you're trying to tackle something like this to go out and gather your own surveys and conduct your own research. I think that's really commendable. At what point did you think you had a sample size large enough while you're doing these surveys to kind of justify making assumptions about the big assumptions such as like gender, or tied to cultural backgrounds,
Yeah, totally. So that's why I had the academic support for each of these assertions. By no means necessary was this an ethnograph or a statistically, I'm not saying because of these bar graphs, this is what is true. I was just exemplifying what you can support with research in what I found. So having that, the bar graphs and the quantitative data was helpful for me to just be able to illustrate it for people rather than reading through all of the 51 interviews.
I assume that's clear the same answers come through for you. This is a who's who of great colleagues that I can, you're graduates in the division.
Yes, Granny.
Yeah. I'm glad you're here. You're clearly an asset as a Hilltop. Thank you.
Sorry. No,
Yeah,
before.
I mean, obviously, it's very impressive in terms of the travel that you did in Europe and then moving over to the States. Did you get a sense of the cultural shift in terms of responses when you moved from Europe, the European context, into really a kind of a West Coast, Southwest, United States context in terms of the attitudes, in terms of the responses?
The one thing that I would say is perhaps even a limitation on what I was researching is that I'm a young traveler, and I interviewed predominantly, if not entirely, young travelers. So I think that there might be something we could say for the West Coast versus Europe, but I'd say that because of the people that were willing to interact with me, especially in the context in which I could meet them, are probably going to be open-minded folks. And because of that, I think that the culture shift is one of not necessarily geography, but of mindset that could be a result of being a millennial or a result of being just open-minded and a traveler. Yes?
So, I really like the presentation.
Thanks.
I wanted to, throughout your studies, did you ever find, common elements that many traditionalist countries share, or that many progressive countries share, or, any kind of hint as to why a country was traditionalist? Was it because of the prevalence of religion, or, maybe just established, cultural norms over time?
Sure.
I mean, it's kind of a broad question.
No. I like that question because I think it gets at what I'm trying to talk about. It would be, so for example, the first summer that I traveled after Dr. Cotter's class, I went through 17 countries in Europe. I didn't have a plan. I was just traveling. And it would be really hard for me to go through, I got to learn about the histories when I was there, but if I didn't know I was going to Hungary, or if I didn't know I was going to Croatia, to do all that research would provide me insight. But I think that for a practical, comprehensive trend between traditional countries, the point is that just a link is there based upon certain qualities. So rather than try to know everything about Mexico and Pakistan and Brazil and wherever you're going, if you are aware of at least where are they at socioeconomically? If we're going to talk about political upheaval, what's going on there? We talk about are you in a rural area versus an urban area? It really changes the whole experience and dynamic of you as an individual. So there are probably trends, but I wouldn't say that there's just one. Because if you compare, for example, I love this example, Germany is progressive, but if you go to Bavaria, which is the southwest area of Germany, they're a lot more conservative and they're a lot more religious there, which you could argue is why they're conservative. But there might be other factors that I'm not considering by saying that. But just knowing that by itself, that they're more religious, would help you to adjust to that culture and accommodate. Any questions? Cool. Thank you. Hey, I just wanted to thank everybody that showed up for the Honors Symposium, for coming out and showing support. I also wanted to thank those that stood in the hallway. I know the presentation is running a bit late, and some individuals had pressing meetings and couldn't stay. But thank you for at least coming. And for those that couldn't come but sent me texts or called or sent me a fruit bouquet, I really appreciate it. I have a really special gratitude toward my mentor, Professor Ennis Mitchell, who's not only been super supportive in this whole thesis writing process, but has been a wonderful professor for the 3 classes I've taken with him and the 1 class that I TA'd for him. Also Dr. Cotter, who's been there for the last 2 summers, at least for a part of the time, and has just taught me so much about innumerable things, and it's been wonderful. And also for Eric for coming through and filming the thesis presentation last minute, and so my loved ones, my family, and friends could see it that couldn't come. Just, I have so much gratitude. It's overwhelming. I really appreciate all the support that everyone has provided, and you've made this senior thesis experience a really wonderful one. So thank you.